shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou.
He said, only in the throne, Joseph, will I be greater than you. That means when people see you, they're going to see a king. When you say a man live, a man live. When you say a man dies, a man dies. Your word will rule Egypt. Read.
Verse 41. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt.
I did what?
I have set thee over all the land of Egypt.
And I don't understand why brothers won't even accept this. It was like, we wasn't no shepherds. What good is a shepherd? The Most High always used the low of the earth to rule, so that he can show his power through us. You're saying that you can't be a shepherd or a slave in Egypt, but what are you here in America? You are a slave. If you were living back in Egypt, you'll be in the same predicament under another people. Okay, back then we were shepherds. Read on. What verse you left off?
Verse 42.
Go ahead.
And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand.
Now you have to understand the significance of that ring. See, people don't understand when it comes to rulership and dominion. A ring is distinguished only for the king, so he can stamp all legislature. So if there's rules or laws that need to be passed, it would have to have the king's signet on it for it to be approved from kingdom to kingdom. It's only on the king's signet, and it's on the one ring. So no laws were decreed or passed unless it went through Joseph. They would melt the wax on the laws and stick your ring in the wax for the king's signet, or it wouldn't be law. So that's how big Joseph was. Joseph had the king's ring that brought forth all legislation in the land of Egypt. Read.
Verse 42. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck.
So you know what Pharaoh did? Pharaoh dressed Joseph up like a what? Like an Egyptian. So when you see Joseph's tombs and his relics of Imhotep, you would think it was an Egyptian, but the Pharaoh dressed him up as an Egyptian. Kind of like we see right here. The Hebrew pharaohs of Egypt. And that's the reason when his brothers came to see him, they couldn't recognize him. Because he was dressed, he looked exactly like an Egyptian.
That's also telling you something too.
What's that?
If his brothers couldn't recognize him, that's his brother. That means if he was mistaken as an Egyptian, his whole brothers must look like him.
Exactly. And if he was mistaken as an Egyptian, that means he must have been black just like the other Egyptians. Absolutely. But check this out. You would know your little brother. They didn't recognize him because he was dressed up like a king. He had the eye stuff going, everything. He looked just like an Egyptian king. They didn't even recognize him because he was dressed up as the king of Egypt. Who's that? Imhotep. Okay? And even in Egypt history, Imhotep came in at a point and was totally separate from the Egyptians. But that's another point. I don't want to get off the beaten path. Let's get the next scripture here. Where's that sheet at here? Let's get let's read on down to 57. Finish reading.
Not valid.
Verse 43.
Go ahead.
And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had.
Go ahead.
And they cried before him, Bow the knee. And he made him rule over all the land of Egypt.
They made him what?
Bow the knee. And he made him rule over all the land of Egypt.
So Joseph was a ruler over all the land of Egypt. That's crystal clear. Read on.
And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name.
Read that, hold up, read that last part again so we can see how big Joseph was. Read that part again.
Verse 44. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt.
A man cannot do nothing unless it comes through Joseph, which was an Israelite. All right? Read on.
And verse 45. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath Paaneah,
Go ahead.
and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of
Potiphar.
Potiphar, priest of On.
Now, these are the Hebrew names when you break it down. These are Hebrew names. All right? Read.
And
Now, when you translate them, they translate into Egypt names, but we're reading this directly translated from the Hebrew to English, so you can understand. All right? Read.
And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt.
He was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Read.
And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And in 7 plenteous years the earth brought forth by handfuls. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities, the food of the field, which was round about every city, laid he up in the same. And Joseph gathered corn, as the sand of the sea, very, very much, until he left numbering, for it was without number. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons after the years of famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bare unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh.
Manasseh is your modern day Cubans. Okay? Read.
For the Most High, said he, hath made me forgotten all my toil, and all my father's house.
Read a little faster. Go ahead.
And the name of the second called he Ephraim. For the Most High hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction.
And those are the so-called Puerto Ricans. Those 2 tribes came out of Joseph that were originally in Egypt. And believe it or not, there's a lot of Ephraimites and Manassites still in Egypt till this day. They look just like Puerto Ricans but speak Egyptian. Read.
Verse 53. And the 7 years of plenteous that was in the land of Egypt were ended, and the 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said. And the dearth was in all lands, but in the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians,